Kia ora koutou. Welcome everyone to this live YouTube presentation. We're doing something a little bit different at the moment because normally we would go live on Facebook, but we've had a few technology challenges, and so we're going to try this YouTube platform instead, and we hope that it's useful for everyone. I'm really excited to be joined today by Sabrina. Sabrina is one of our amazing... Sorry about that. That's not good. We have got Sabrina, who's joined us here from Longworth Education, and we're going to be talking particularly about a webinar that we're about to host. And we are hosting this. It's a little bit different from what Longworth have done in the past. And that's why I've brought Sabrina in to talk about this today, because we'd like to be able to really outline some of the philosophies that sit in behind this workshop and how this can look in a school context, and certainly where play fits in this as well. So really excited to have Sabrina join me for this discussion around innovative mindsets, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial mindsets, and of course play. So welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you, Sarah. Kia ora koutou. Yeah, I'm very excited about this because for me it's quite new too.
Yeah, it is. It's very exciting. And I think it's really timely, right? So we're at a real crossroads at the moment between the old and the new, right? We're sort of at this point where we're thinking, oh gosh, there's lots of problems in the world. We're post-pandemic. There's all sorts of calamity going on, and we're trying to get this sort of sense of order, if you like, and the sense of control, and at the same time prepare our kids for a future. We just have no idea what's coming next, right? I think the pandemic showed us that. So if we start a little bit, perhaps first of all, let's just go back a bit and talk a bit about your background, what led you to join us, what your interests are, and then let's see how that fits in with what we're going to talk about with your upcoming webinar.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I guess I've always been a very curious individual myself and like to play myself. And I guess once I had children or became a mother, it really occurred to me how we undervalue play as something we do daily, even as adults. And it's always something that was reserved for kids. And I thought that's kind of strange. And now we need to have children in order to let our inner child out. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting revelation that I had once I became a mother. And I guess because it was just not really valued in society once I had kids, I took that as a license to, cool, now I can be silly on the playground with them. And, I can, play as I can skip along the sidewalk and things like that. So, but that does also show that it's, as you said, that it's quite sad, because when you look historically on how people were learning as human beings evolved, it was through tinkering, through playing, through trying things out. So I think, so I guess my background is completely different to most Longworth educators. So I am from like a business background. So I've worked sort of in a startup entrepreneurship space for probably 15 years, and always had, as I was going to school, I loved school, but for all the wrong reasons that the teacher thought, because, I would like the social aspects of it, but I wasn't necessarily what they would say like a traditional academic person. I was kind of average, and so when I wanted to get into business, it was quite difficult because I'm from Germany. So I've been in New Zealand for 20 years, but I went through schooling in Germany, and so you have to have a certain grade average, and so that didn't quite work in my favor. So I thought I'd take a gap year. I learned English, came to New Zealand, fell in love with the country, fell in love with my partner, and I stayed here. And I guess I kind of fell into through various. So I had some work experience, worked in early childhood, which again was such an sort of eye-opening experience, and kind of then came back around as a sort of a mature student. At around 20, I started studying business, and all of a sudden it kind of came to me that when you really find something you're really passionate about, you're really good at it, because all the things I was academically deemed as not good enough at school, which was maths and kind of physics, chemistry, all of those things, well, you still need maths when you do business, and there's a lot of it, and there's statistics and all of these things, but they're contextualized. And because I had the internal motivation and the passion for it, I was really good at it, and I ended up doing an undergrad in business, and with an A plus average, and so all of a sudden it's like, wow, I wish that was unlocked when I was at school. And then I ended up working for a business incubator straight after uni, worked my way up from an intern all the way to sort of running programs, developing programs, working with a range of people from students to adults, who've been in a business career for a long time, or in a working career, who wanted to start their own businesses, and kind of building their capability, building their, I guess, there's skills around figuring out, when you do have an idea, what do you do with the idea? How do you go about it? And where do you go from next? And then when I had my children, I started looking and questioning the education system, as one does. Not at that time. That time, there was a lot of people that looked at me sideways. It was about, my kids are 11 now, so it would have been about 13 years ago. I started on that journey, where I was like, oh, okay. And then obviously more prevalent once the kids were about 2 years old, 3 years old. And people are like, what do you mean? Well, you live in Auckland, there's amazing schools everywhere. What do you mean? And I could kind of see, without having all the right language and having all the right education background, I could kind of see there was something missing in a lot of mainstream schools around the lack of play, for example. And so, long story short, I found some other parents and some educators, and we co-founded a play-based school that was outdoor-centric, child-centric, that was on the Auckland's North Shore. And that was an interesting journey, but so rewarding. And my kids really still reap the rewards now. So they're intermediate now, and they still reap the rewards from having just that play-based foundation for so long, and being out in the bush, and following their curiosity. And it's just been really amazing seeing that. And so I guess I found my intersection of entrepreneurship and education, and really found my passion, because when I was looking at entrepreneurship, and we can go into that a little bit more as well, I guess, but I kind of figured out, a lot of people focus on adults, and then I was working at a lot of universities, a lot of people focused on young adults, and then more and more high schools are now focusing on kind of building entrepreneurial mindset. But I was like, hang on a minute, there's actually so much that you can do for younger children, but it's not really being seen as valuable. And that's when I could then see the sort of, I guess, synergies between what we talk about, why play is important and how play looks like, and then entrepreneurial mindset and those connections. And then over the years I met you, Sarah, and Sarah was one of our founding advisors at the play-based school, ACO. And so when I more recently completed my master's thesis, where I was looking at how enterprise is being taught in New Zealand schools, I reached out and said to Sarah, hey, would you be open to collaborate? And she's like, yeah, it's very timely. So that's where we.
Yeah, so the word enterprise, I want to just pick up on that for a minute, because that's obviously a focus in your master's. I know, having gone through the New Zealand school system, that I first met the word enterprise as part of the Young Enterprise scheme or process, I suppose, at high school level. So up until then, I had not come across enterprise, anything to do, like we had, commerce type studies or those kinds of things at high school. But up until then, there was nothing. There was no connection. So can you talk through a little bit about what you mean by entrepreneurship, enterprise, what the differences might be, and so on?
Yeah, that's a very great point. And that was a very big focus of the thesis too, because it's kind of like you're opening a can of worms, because there's a lot of confusion around definitions. And it's not just in New Zealand, it's actually all across the world. And it's both in sort of the business world and in the academic world. So there's actually, up to this point, and it's been years and years that these terms have been around, and the concepts that we connect with those terms. But up until this point, there's not a real overall consensus around what is what and what are the distinct definitions. However, there's some consensus around there's kind of few ways of looking at it, but you can look at it. Most people, when they hear entrepreneurship or enterprise, either of those words, they connect something maybe quite, I would say the narrow definition of it with it. So they connect business, starting a business or running a business or a business idea or capitalism or kind of all of the things to do with, if you actually have an idea or you want to start a business, that's what you do. That's entrepreneurship. That's
and how to make money from it. Would that be
and
fair
how
to
to
say?
make money from it. That's and
make profit
exactly
from it. Yeah.
And so that is a very narrow definition. And I think that's one of the issues, I think, that especially when you look at it in terms of the schooling system and education, that people like me face, because I'm so passionate about it and I know what it can unlock in learners, that you have that barrier that people think, oh, it's all about making money, and we shouldn't be teaching these kids, that's not for everyone. And the thing is, when you look at it in a wider definition, so when you look at what an entrepreneurial mindset is really looking to instill, it's those broader skills that as an educator everyone is passionate about, right? It's these things like problem solving, it's the things of being adaptable, being a critical thinker, working with people from different backgrounds and relating to them. And then a lot of people talk about and go, well, hang on a minute, but there are also other skills. They're like other competencies, we call them maybe soft skills, C skills, whatever, and also they're not just, you can't just learn them through entrepreneurship. And absolutely, I'm absolutely not saying this is the only way you can learn those skills. But what I'm saying is, by building an entrepreneur mindset, you kind of get two for the price of one. So, okay, that's business speak, but you kind of have two objectives that you can achieve with it, because the people that are wanting, or the learners or the young people that are wanting to start a business, or not just like a profit business, but a lot of young people are really passionate about their community. They're really passionate about solving an issue that they see. So it could be like a social enterprise or not-for-profit. So that gives them the vehicles and the tools to actually explore that at a very young age. And a lot of them get so much out of it. They might not ever pursue that beyond a certain point, but they get so much learning that they transfer into other areas. But if they do want to pursue it, well, then they're off and they have a head start, but these and at the same time you learn all of these other skills, even if these learners never ever do anything to do with their own business, they still have those really transferable skills and build those competencies that we've deemed so important, especially when you look at where the future of work is going as well. So that's obviously part of my business type context, is sort of keeping an eye out on what future type skills and competencies we might need. And a lot of the things that are synonymous with entrepreneurial mindset and skills is exactly the things that people keep on going on about we need more of.
Yeah. And I think really COVID showed us the need for adaptability, flexible thinking, pivoting, not sitting in this nice little comfort zone of thinking that our career might be safe forever and we just chug along until we hit retirement. So this is something that's not only getting us ready for the workforce or entering workforce, but these are life skills, right? That I'm just thinking of the horrible stuff at the moment around our public servants and some of them losing their jobs. I would hope that they're able to go, obviously, into other employment, but for some they may not. Some they may have to think in a really creative way to think about how they might like to either be able to pay the mortgage, or if there's a cause or a social issue that they want to address, use those skills to be able to do it.
Yeah, totally. And that's something that we've seen as well. So as a sort of, I guess, long tail of COVID, a lot of people have realized, either they've realized that life is too short and they have to reprioritize things, and they're making a conscious choice to change things around, whether there be a job that they've been stuck for in a while, or a career or whatever, or they're forced because of restructuring and cost cutting and all the terrible things. And I guess I've always been a person who was sees the glass half full, and you just need to see that as an opportunity to create that life that you want to have and that you want to live. And those tools are absolutely important to be able to do that.
Mm. And I'm thinking, I've got a couple of teenagers in the house, and one of the things that has surprised me is, they've had a model in our house of both entrepreneurial parents, but also me as a public servant, and they've got extended family around them that initially have been public servants and moved into their own businesses. So they've had a sort of measure of both. But one thing that surprised me is their options for work, their options for life ahead, um, are far wider and less predictable than, say, my generation when I was thinking about what I was going to do once I finished school. And there's a lot of, I think, certainly what I'm feeling about the teenage generation at the moment is that they're actually wanting different. They're wanting to do different things. As you say, there's a lot of social causes out there at the moment that I know our adolescents are quite passionate about, and are looking to do different things. So some of them are, potentially going to go into that first job, which isn't going to be, well, actually, I had pointed out the other day, no one pumps petrol anymore. So there's no more pumping of petrol anymore, which is one of my first jobs. But potentially, and for good or bad, the retail sector is changing. The whole idea of what work and the workplace is changing. So the reality is our kids coming through are going to potentially have to, transform themselves several times over in their lifetime to do different types of work, aren't they?
Definitely. And I think it's quite interesting also looking at, talking to employers or talking to, sort of older generation or our generation. And we often talk about sort of the different attitude that young learners or like young people have these days. And, we struggle with, because sometimes they're like, I'm not doing that job, and so it's really interesting because they have sort of, I guess it depends on which generation you talk about and, sort of what age coming through, but it's especially sort of high schoolers and school leavers. They have they have their own ideas and they're confident in I guess standing up for what they believe in and what they want to do, and definitely what they don't want to do. So I think we as going through the times we've come through, we find it hard sometimes to grapple that. But what happens when that hits the education system, that often doesn't work for I don't know 60% or whatever the rate is of learners don't do well in the current system that it's set up. So if you have this sort of already quite those free-spirited generations coming through, and they rub against this education system, which is really quite putting you in a box, and if you don't fit that box, then just see how well you do.
Yeah.
These kids get very quickly disengaged, and I think we're having a massive issue at the moment around how can we actually get our various learners engaged. How can we get at-risk learners? How can we get minorities? Like so many people with learning needs. We have so many issues at the moment that we're trying to grapple with. And a lot of it comes back down to also engagement. I know they're very complex things, but one big thing is around engagement.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
one of the things that I found for my thesis, which was so I guess exciting and also made so much sense for me, but was the fact that there was not one single child that was disengaged with entrepreneurial type activities as they got exposed to it. And so just bit more background around that. So I went, and it's a small data set and it's qualitative study. However, it gives a really good glimpse of 4 schools that I went into and that were already embracing entrepreneurial type enterprise sort of activities. It was 1 primary school, 1 intermediate school, 1 high school, and 1 school that goes all the way from primary to senior. And speaking to the teachers, speaking to the principals and to the children, and just seeing that there was not one child that was disengaged. And even to the fact where I had teachers telling me, especially the kids that usually are not engaged, or especially the kids that are usually struggling, or that have learning needs, or and I think this is something where, once again, coming back to that passion and why I got into it in the first place, if you help kids to figure out what they're passionate about, you can then contextualize any learning. It doesn't matter what you want them to learn, but you can then contextualize. As a good educator, you then have the tools to figure out, okay, that's what they need to learn. This is their interest. How can we combine it? Yeah. And so I think, once again, that comes back down to those entrepreneurial mindset and why I'm so passionate about it. Because I can just see how that can solve some other problem. It's not the
no, it's not. And look, I equally feel that way about play, and this is where I see play and entrepreneurial mindset. It sets, really intersecting, because when we start to see play as a vehicle for learning, and you've listed all of the skills that we talk about, the benefits are of play, right? That when children engage in play, they're also developing these skills. So ideally, if people who are wanting to develop this mindset, this way of viewing the world and interacting with the world, ideally it's going to be in a playful way. It's not going to be, well, if it's a passion, we're going to have fun with it. It might not always be, it might not always be easy or joyous, but even the challenge will be fun, right?
That's right, because it's like that intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what does this entrepreneurial mindset look like for, I don't know, say an 8-year-old? What would we see in a classroom of an 8-year-old that's showing some of this thinking?
Yeah, so there's different ways of doing it. I guess usually at that age, you don't necessarily, you don't necessarily want to expect that they have maybe an idea, that they want to, explore. But you can, so first of all, what's really, really important having, and it comes back to, it doesn't matter if it's entrepreneurial mindset or play or whatever, I guess, when you look at sort of learning pedagogies, is having something that cements the learning. And so again, there's a very big link between entrepreneurial mindset and authentic learning. So what we've seen in all the schools that do it really successfully is that they have sort of a learning outcome that's different to just giving whatever they need to do to the teacher. So it doesn't matter what age, having some sort of authentic learning experience. And that means it could be that they need to do a presentation to the whole class about it. It could be that most of them actually choose what they call a market day. And again, a lot of teachers will be rolling their eyes on, great, a market day. And, but if you do it correctly, a market day is an amazing sort of experience that becomes the culmination of all of their learning. And it really cements that learning, because the kids know that it's going to be real. If they need to do something and the teacher's going to mark it, not every student, and this is again backed up by evidence, not every student is going to buy into that. But if they know that the parents are going to come and the wider community, and that's a different sort of motivation that makes it real for them and makes it authentic. So once you have something like that, like a market day, you can kind of target that towards different age groups. And we have seen it, for example, in the composite school really well, where the younger students had more, I guess, help from the educators or from the teachers, who were saying, okay, so we have this market day, what are some of the things that you might want to sell? And they might say, oh, we're going to make cookies, or so that kind of sort of really simple ideas. But again, they take ownership of it, and there comes things in like student agency, because they go, okay, no, I'm deciding I want to do cookies. And then the teacher goes, okay, so which cookies, what do you need for it? So then the whole process gets sort of broken down into, okay, if you want to sell a cookie at the market day, what do you need to do to get ready? And so I guess it's sort of an involvement from when you look at play and playing with shops, and so many kids when they're in kindergarten or at daycare, or at home, they start playing shops and imitating real life. It's kind of an extension of that. So even with an 8-year-old, you can kind of do that. Some 8-year-olds are like super switched on, and they go, we've got a lemon tree out there, I'm going to turn that into my own homemade lemonade, and the lemons are free because they're from my tree. I'm going to, and
Yeah.
yes, it is
Yeah.
about, for them, it's like the motivation of getting the money, but
Yeah.
all of the things that they learn about it is the things that, are the things that we should be looking at,
Mm.
and that it's amazing. And, once they make the money, they can either, do something for themselves, or you can encourage them, okay, now that you've got maybe half of that you want to give to a charity, or, like
Yeah.
there's so many ways, different ways of looking at it by
Mm.
by seeing it more holistically.
And I'm wondering too, because we also know developmentally that at around that sort of 7, 8 stage, they're just starting to move away from that egocentric stage of the younger age, right? So we're going to have many who are very motivated by making some money and how much money they want to make, because it's all about them. But also, having a market day, but then potentially having a problem. I'm just thinking, I'm thinking big terms, like, we have our Give a Little funds and we have the GoFundMe's and things like that. And as an answer in society to some of these problems, but there might, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's got to come from an authentic need somehow, or
Yes.
problem, or so, if there's a problem where someone's bike gets stolen in the classroom, and no one has any money to buy a new bike, and that bike's gone, and our friend's very upset, and it's really sad when someone's bike gets stolen, and I wonder how we can help our friend. So what we're doing is contextualizing the need for the motivation to raise some money or some funds, if we want to go down that sort of community social enterprise
Yep.
mindset, right? To kind of encourage that. But equally, it's okay for these kids to think, well, I do want some extra pocket money, and I want to be. I'm saving for that toy that I've seen, and I'm going to make lemonade to, because that's also them learning about that sort of cause and effect of society. If we like something, we want to buy it, we need money. So how do we get money? So it does come back to kind of, when you say that authentic experience, it's trying to make it as meaningful as possible for the kids, so that then they are motivated to think about how they're going to engage with it.
Yes, that's right. And
Mm.
and thank you for picking up on that, because that's kind of the most obvious route, but then yeah, totally what schools have done, and what's another way of attacking it, especially for younger learners, is posing an issue. So, and there's so many ways you can do that. So some schools, they've had already within the local community, they've had things that are needed to solve. So for example, one school had massive amounts of land around them that was just costing them money, and they weren't sure what to do with it. So they actually basically figured out a whole plan of farming the land, growing maize over here, having a veggie garden, and then every year group from year 0 to year 8 was in charge of a different type of, and that learning was all kind of contextualized around whatever their job was. But it was all because of the need of not wanting to lose any money from all this excess land that they had that they weren't using. Another school was looking at it, or is kind of a local school, is looking at it now from the point of view that the school needs to raise funds in for certain improvements that the ministry doesn't cover, and they want to involve the kids in it. And I
Yeah.
mean, this is again so amazing, because there's so many other things that get taught. It's about being a citizen. Like
Yeah.
you're part of a democratic society, and there's so many things that you can kind of learn through play and through entrepreneurial mindset, is by, okay, now this is the problem that we're facing. What are some of the ways that we can kind of attack that, and can do a fundraising? So they're kind of, over the course of, I think, the rest of the year now, they'll be looking at sort of activities that the kids want to do towards that, and then they also have little mini events, or maybe they have a bigger event to kind of be like bring it all together. But again, so you can do it like that, or some schools have worked with local businesses or a local community, where an organization has gone, okay, we are, I don't know, a local apple grower or whatever, and we've had all these issues around weather conditions, and no. These are the issues, and so they bring in these experts from this organization, from the company, who tell the kids a whole lot of stuff about, this is the state of play, this is what our issues are, this is how it usually works, and then they go to the kids, okay, the kids
Yeah.
have, you can literally do that over like a week intensive,
Yeah.
and like or you can draw it out over a whole term, or you can do it over a whole year and do it, every week a little bit, whatever. But you have this massive flexibility. And then the kids start ideating all these ideas, and then, they bring the experts back in, and, they kind of coach them through it. And then again, they present their solutions or their things back to the company. And it does so many things for the organization. Not only does it give them like some ideas that they probably would have never thought of, because kids' creativity is just, completely different what they come up with. But it also gets the kids kind of aware of some of the issues in their community, and specifically how certain organizations might operate. And for the teachers and for the educators, it's great because they have already so much to do. And, adding something else to their workload is just not, is just totally overburdening them. But, they can bring these experts in who are more than willing to help, and it makes it exciting for the kids to hear from someone else as well. So I guess there's like so many different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, and this is, for those that know the work we do, effectively what you've described as a play invitation, because what we are doing is trying to hook kids in to get excited about solving a problem in a playful way. And I'm pleased you mentioned about how creative kids can be, because sometimes as adults we're very limited in our scope of potential solutions to a problem, because we know how the world works. We, already we start thinking, oh yeah, but that won't work, or oh yeah, but the money, and so we start kind of going like that. And so I think it's really useful to have children who aren't aware of barriers and challenges, and they just throw these things out there, and it becomes this great big cauldron of ideas that people can start connecting. I can remember it in an intermediate class that I was teaching, we were talking about, and this was 20 years ago now, we were talking about how to solve the world problems, all the pollution problems. And one child said to me, well, why don't we just put all the rubbish in a rocket and fly it at the sun? And I just, at the time, I thought, that is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. That's an incinerator. There's no reason for us to keep this rubbish on Earth. Maybe carbon footprint and rocket, and, potentially it could go off on a different pathway, but hopefully it gets within so far of the sun, and it will get sucked in and burned up, and that's it. And so I just thought, there are some possibilities there that kids can provide us that are out of our scope of creativity now as adults. So this is where the play comes in, right? This is playing with ideas, playing with concepts. And I think one of the things that many teachers of older children struggle with, this concept of play, right? They think of play as blocks and Play-Doh and sand pits and dress ups. And I'd have to argue that I think that's still important for older kids as well. But if you are a teacher of older kids and you're kind of thinking, my kids are too old for that now, we've got to get serious, we can't be playing about, mucking about. Well, actually, this is a form of play, right? Is coming up with these ideas, playing around with them, collaborating, communicating, working out, problems that come up along the way and trying to overcome them. And this is that intersection that we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And it's quite funny. Well, it's actually not funny, but it was sort of one of the revelations that I had out of my research was also looking at, I was trying to understand what are some of the, I guess, favorable conditions, or what are sort of the things that happen in schools that already embrace enterprise, in order to kind of figure out, is there anything we can learn for similar kind of environments. And so it was always quite important, as with a lot of initiatives, that you have sort of senior leadership buy-in and those sort of things. So, okay, that was kind of almost self-explanatory. One of the other things that was actually looking at the entrepreneurial mindset, or the sort of behavior that the teachers displayed. And they all were actually kind of entrepreneurial in their own rights, but none of them would have used any of those words. As a matter of fact, when I talked to them about it, often they were like, now I kind of feel out of my depth because I've never started my business, or business is not my thing, or, so there was that kind of, I guess, imposter syndrome that a lot of those teachers were feeling. And the fact that they would not label, some of the things that they were doing as entrepreneurial. But for example, they had to lobby, in terms of, or get They had to champion that whole idea in front of the board or in front of other educators, or, so they had to do a lot of that. Sometimes they had to do certain fundraising or get certain funds allocated, for certain activities or things like that. That's all entrepreneurial sort of hustle. That's what someone would do if you're starting up. You need to try to convince others to join you, right? So and so I guess that really made me think about, and this is why I'm so passionate about this upcoming webinar, because I could see that the better we can equip educators around this, and the more we can build their capability and their confidence in it, the more they can actually just live the experience and role play the experience themselves, and the kids will pick up on that. So that's sort of, in the webinar, I'll give educators some tools that they can kind of use in the classroom. But actually, what I'm most excited and interested about is the educators trying it out themselves. So literally going, honestly, you probably had an idea stuck in your head, or maybe just, think of something right now, but let's experience what it will be like to go through like an entrepreneurial exercise and what you can learn through that. Because every single time I've taken anyone through kind of more of a structured way of doing that, they've built confidence in terms of, wow, okay, I can actually do this. And now that confidence relates in other things. And so I think that this is what I'm hoping, as well as more educators get familiar with how beneficial building an entrepreneur mindset actually can be, the more confident they build themselves. And then that translates into, it doesn't matter what they teach, So again, I don't think that everyone should start their own business, but I'm really passionate about, our next generations and helping educators who are definitely passionate about what they do. Otherwise, they would not be in that role, given what's going on. How I can help them achieve that. And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah. So for people who are interested in doing your webinar, let's just talk a little bit about that. It's going to be a live webinar, and it's over 2 nights. So it's after school on the 6th and 7th of May. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. And it's 3:30 to 5:30.
Yep.
So, we're breaking it up over 2 days to get people to digest some of the information, hopefully give people enough chance to, wrap up after school. And then, so you can, if you've got good connection at school, you can log in from school, otherwise, from home. And and so I'll take you through sort of more in depth of my research findings, which really set some really important groundwork. But also, it's not just me saying this. Sort of, as I said earlier, my background, as you now have figured, is kind of from business. And I think what a lot of global issues, are now kind of related to, well, we can solve some of these really big issues. They're all related to somehow economies, and, somehow, as you said, unfortunately, we are living in a society that runs on money. So somehow, even if this mess that we've created, we have to solve somehow. And so I guess what's happening is, around the world, there's more and more acknowledgement, especially after COVID, that people need to have these entrepreneurial skills. And there's a massive push from industry. There's a massive push from global organization, like, the World Economic Forum or the World Bank, or like big global organizations that look at, global issues. And they are starting to press forward. And there's governments around the world that are way ahead of New Zealand, unfortunately, that make some really bold moves around what they're doing in the entrepreneurial and in the play space. And I think if we want to make sure that our learners are prepared, I think it's almost like our duty to, kind of get up with speed, on those sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know from business owners that I speak to that while they acknowledge that, the capabilities around our literacy and numeracy and those core skills are important, what sets future employees apart are these other skills. They want people coming to them who are innovative, who are problem solvers, who can use their initiative and all of those skills that you mentioned earlier. And if we've got young people coming into the workforce with those skills, they are ahead of their counterparts who may have slogged away at school doing well in subject studies, but have missed the bit where we have to develop these social and emotional skills as well. So this is where it is related to workforce readiness as well, isn't it? Yeah,
That's right.
and employability. Yeah.
And you can totally, like your whatever new things come in, like, the hour of literacy, numeracy, and, you can actually combine and achieve that goal by using play or entrepreneur mindset, as kind of the environment that you create. And you
Yeah.
still achieve those, if you're purposeful around it, and with some guidance, you'll still achieve those things that you have to do for
Yeah.
whoever sees. But at the same time, you're actually achieving it in a more holistic way, that it's nicer and more engaging for the learners. And in the long term, it'll be, a lot more rewarding for everyone. I mean, the other
Yeah.
thing we found is, like, educators are so much more engaged in when they do things like that as well. So
Yeah.
I guess sometimes in the short run, with everything that's a bit different and a bit new, it can be harder work, because not everyone sees the value of play. Not everyone sees the value of the entrepreneur mindset. So if you're someone that kind of comes to the light and sees it, you might have to become a beacon to start off with, and hold that stand, and get others to kind of catch up. So that can definitely be hard at the beginning, but it's so worthwhile in the long run.
And New Zealand's full of these innovative thinkers, right? These trend setters. So this is in our DNA. This is what we're capable of. So it's time to tap into that again. Sabrina, thank you so much for this. For those of you who are interested in learning more, please go onto our Longworth Education website. I will put a link in the description below, and we will be putting this on Facebook as well. You won't miss the link to be able to register to join. And I'm sure when you do get involved with this webinar, you will certainly come away with lots of inspiration and be ready to go in your classrooms with your students. So thank you, and have a great start to term 2.